I'm Amber, 32 years old, and I never thought my career as a waitress would get me uninvited from my own brother's wedding. When Matthew told me I couldn't attend because I was just a waitress, my world shattered. What hurt even more was my parents' reaction when I sought their support. They laughed coldly and said, "That's just how it is." The family I'd been secretly supporting for years saw me as nothing but an embarrassment. If you've ever felt disrespected by those who should love you most, stick around. Before I continue my story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you've ever had to stand up for yourself against family who couldn't see your worth. Growing up in the Sullivan household, I always knew I was different. While my parents Richard and Karen focused on status and appearances, I was drawn to simpler, more authentic things. My brother Matthew thrived in our achievement-focused family. He got straight A's, attended an Ivy League university, and landed a prestigious job at a finance firm right after graduation. I, on the other hand, was labeled the black sheep from an early age. "Why can't you be more like your brother?" became the soundtrack of my childhood. My mother would sigh dramatically whenever my report cards showed B's instead of A's. My father would shake his head in disappointment when I chose art club over debate team. It wasn't that I wasn't smart or capable, I just had different interests and values. When I discovered my passion for food during a home economics class in high school, my parents dismissed it as a cute hobby. When I announced my intention to attend culinary school instead of pursuing a business degree, my father erupted. "No daughter of mine is going to waste her life cooking for other people," he declared over dinner one night. "That's what maids and servants do, Amber. We raised you for better things." Matthew, 5 years my senior and already climbing the corporate ladder, sided with our parents. "Think about the family reputation, Amber," he said with that condescending tone that would become more pronounced as he rose through the ranks at his firm. "Sullivans aren't in service positions. We're leaders." Despite their disapproval, I enrolled in culinary classes at the local community college while working part-time to support myself. My parents' financial support evaporated the moment I chose my own path. Still, I persevered, falling more in love with food preparation and service with each passing day. After 2 years of classes, I made what my family considered my most shameful decision yet. I took a full-time position as a waitress at Frank's, an upscale restaurant downtown. My logic was simple. I wanted to learn the restaurant business from the ground up. How could I ever hope to run my own establishment if I didn't understand every aspect of the industry? "It's just temporary," I tried explaining to my mother over the phone. "Frank has promised to move me into kitchen training after I learn the front of house." "Don't tell anyone in the family," was her only response. "Your cousin Sarah is getting engaged next month, and I don't want to have to explain why you're serving food instead of having a respectable career." What my family never knew was that their comfortable lifestyle had begun to crumble long before I took the waitressing job. My father's investment firm had taken a significant hit during the recession, and their savings had dwindled. Too proud to admit financial difficulty, they maintained appearances while quietly selling assets to stay afloat. I discovered their predicament by accident during a rare visit home 3 years ago. I found past due mortgage notices hidden in the kitchen drawer while looking for a corkscrew. When I confronted my father, he broke down, admitting they were 6 months behind on payments and facing possible foreclosure. That night, I set up automatic transfers from my account to theirs, $1,200 monthly to help with their mortgage, and my father's heart medication that insurance wouldn't fully cover. It stretched my budget to the breaking point, but they were my parents. Despite their disapproval of my life choices, I couldn't bear to see them lose their home. "Don't tell Matthew," my father had pleaded. "He thinks I'm still consulting. It would kill me for him to know the truth." So began my double life, the disappointment daughter who was just a waitress by day, and the secret financial support system for my parents by night. The irony wasn't lost on me, but I kept my promise and never told Matthew about our parents' financial struggles. At Frank's restaurant, I found the acceptance my family never gave me. Jasmine, another waitress who became my closest friend, valued my work ethic and passion for food. Frank himself took me under his wing, recognizing something in me that my own family couldn't see. "You've got an eye for detail and a memory for preferences that can't be taught," Frank told me after I remembered a regular customer's complicated order without writing it down. Those are the qualities that separate good restaurants from great ones. While my relationship with Frank and Jasmine flourished, my connection with Matthew continued to deteriorate. As he climbed higher in his firm and began dating Brittany, the daughter of a prominent real estate developer, the gap between our worlds widened. Our monthly catch-up calls dwindled to obligatory holiday greetings. The brother who had once pushed me on swings and helped with my math homework became a stranger who looked through me rather than at me. "He's just busy with work," I would tell Jasmine when she asked about my family. But deep down, I knew the truth. Matthew wasn't too busy. He was too embarrassed by his waitress sister to maintain our relationship. Still, I held on to hope that blood would eventually overcome status, that the brother I once knew was still in there somewhere beneath the expensive suits and affected accent he'd developed. That hope would sustain me until the day I learned about his wedding plans and my exclusion from them. The first hint that something was wrong came from Lisa, a regular customer at Frank's who happened to work with Matthew's fiancée Brittany at the same law firm. "I'm so excited for your brother's wedding," she mentioned casually while I refilled her water glass. "Brittany's been showing everyone her engagement ring. It's gorgeous. Must have cost a fortune." I froze, water pitcher still tilted. "I'm sorry, what wedding?" Lisa's smile faltered. "Oh, I thought you knew. Your brother Matthew and Brittany got engaged last month. They're planning a June ceremony at the Lakeside Country Club." I managed to maintain my professional composure, but inside, my mind was racing. Why hadn't Matthew told me? We weren't close anymore, but surely an engagement warranted at least a text message. That evening, I called Matthew 3 times before he finally answered. "Hey, I've been meaning to call you," he said, his voice artificially bright. "Things have been crazy busy." "Congratulations on your engagement," I said, trying to keep the hurt from my voice. "I had to hear about it from one of Brittany's coworkers." "Right, sorry about that. It's been a whirlwind. Listen, can I call you back? I'm heading into a meeting." Before I could respond, he had hung up. The pattern continued for weeks, unreturned calls, vague text responses, and a growing sense that something was very wrong. Finally, a month later, I received an invitation to a family dinner at an upscale restaurant downtown. When I arrived, I found Matthew and Brittany sitting with my parents, champagne glasses already empty. "There she is," my mother called too loudly as I approached. "Our Amber." The conversation throughout dinner revolved exclusively around wedding plans, the 7-tier cake, the string quartet for the ceremony, the honeymoon in the Maldives. Not once did anyone ask me a question or include me in the planning. "So when should I schedule my fitting for the bridesmaid dress?" I finally asked during dessert, unable to bear the deliberate exclusion any longer. An uncomfortable silence fell over the table. Matthew studied his cheesecake with sudden interest. Brittany glanced at my mother, who cleared her throat. "Well, the wedding party has already been finalized," my mother said. "It's just close family and Brittany's sorority sisters." "I'm not close family?" The words came out sharper than I intended. "Of course you are, honey," my father interjected. "It's just a very exclusive venue with strict capacity limits." I looked directly at Matthew, who still wouldn't meet my eyes. "Is that true?" "The venue is too small for your only sister to attend your wedding." Matthew finally looked up, his expression a mixture of discomfort and irritation. "We'll talk about this later, Amber. This isn't the time or place." The drive home that night was a blur of tears and confusion. Why was I being shut out of such an important family event? What had I done to deserve this treatment? 2 days later, Matthew finally called. I answered immediately, heart pounding with anxiety. "Look, Amber, this is awkward," he began without preamble. "The truth is, You're not invited to the wedding." His words hit like a physical blow. What? Why not? Brittany's family are important people. Her father is on the city council. Her mother chairs 3 major charity boards. The governor might attend. He paused, then continued with clinical detachment. Having a waitress as my sister would be embarrassing. You'd stick out like a sore thumb among the guests. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I'm your sister, Matthew. Your only sister. If you had listened to Mom and Dad and gotten a real job, this wouldn't be an issue. But you insisted on this waitress thing, and now it's complicated. Complicated? My voice was barely a whisper. It's complicated to acknowledge your sister at your wedding? Don't be dramatic, Amber. If you get a real job before June, we can revisit the invitation. Brittany's father knows someone at his bank who might be able to get you an entry-level position. Tears streamed down my face, but Matthew couldn't see them through the phone. So, if I abandon my career goals and take a job I'd hate just to satisfy your and Brittany's image concerns, then I might be allowed to attend my own brother's wedding? Now you're getting it, Matthew said, relief evident in his voice. It's really for the best, Amber. You'd feel out of place anyway with all those successful people. The conversation continued for another painful few minutes, with Matthew attempting to justify his cruelty as some kind of tough love. Each word was another nail in the coffin of our relationship, another confirmation that the brother I once loved was gone. After hanging up, I sat in my apartment, stunned into stillness. The pain was physical, a crushing weight on my chest that made it difficult to breathe. How could my own brother be so ashamed of me that he would exclude me from one of the most important days of his life? I tried to make sense of it, to find some explanation that hurt less than the truth. Maybe he was being pressured by Brittany or her family. Maybe he was trying to protect me from their judgment. But deep down, I knew better. Matthew had made his choice, status over family, appearance over love. That night, I called Jasmine and sobbed through the whole humiliating story. He's wrong, Amber, she said firmly. There's nothing shameful about being a waitress. You work harder than anyone I know. You're smart, you're building toward your dreams, and you've been supporting your parents financially for years. If Matthew can't see your worth, that's his loss, not yours. Her words were a balm, but they couldn't heal the deep wound my brother's rejection had created. I knew I needed to talk to my parents, to seek the support that family should provide in times of pain. Surely they would understand, would stand up for me against Matthew's elitism. I was wrong. The following Sunday, I drove to my parents' suburban home, rehearsing what I would say. I wanted to be calm, rational, to explain how deeply Matthew had hurt me without sounding like I was asking them to choose sides. Despite everything, they were still my parents. They had to understand. I found them in the sunroom, my father reading the financial section of the newspaper while my mother scrolled through her iPad. They seemed surprised to see me. I usually called before visiting. Amber, what a nice surprise, my mother said, setting aside her tablet. Is everything all right? You look like you've been crying. I took a deep breath and sat down across from them. I need to talk to you about Matthew's wedding. He called me a few days ago and told me I'm not invited because I'm a waitress, and it would embarrass him in front of Brittany's family. I waited for their shock, their outrage on my behalf. Instead, my father lowered his newspaper and exchanged a glance with my mother. Well, these society weddings have certain expectations, he said carefully. Matthew is marrying into an influential family. There are considerations beyond just who he wants there. I stared at him in disbelief. Dad, he's excluding me because of my job. How can you defend that? My mother sighed and placed her hand over mine in what I suppose she thought was a comforting gesture. Sweetie, this is just how the world works. Important people don't mix with servers. It's not personal. I pulled my hand away as if burned. Not personal? I'm his sister. And I'm not just a server. I'm learning the restaurant business. I have goals and plans. To my horror, both of my parents laughed, a cold, dismissive sound that made my stomach clench. "That's just how it is in the real world, Amber," my mother said with a patronizing smile. "Playing restaurant might be fun for now, but it's not a real career for someone with your background and education." "Playing restaurant?" I echoed, anger beginning to replace my hurt. "I work 50-hour weeks. I'm taking night classes in business management. I've been developing my own recipes and techniques. And I've been supporting both of you financially for 3 years." My father's face darkened. "We've accepted your help temporarily because of some setbacks in my business. That doesn't mean we approve of your life choices. If anything, you should be using your money more wisely instead of throwing it away on this restaurant fantasy." Throwing it away? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Do you have any idea how hard I work for that money? Money that pays your mortgage and Dad's heart medication." My mother waved her hand dismissively. "Richard's business is picking up again. We've just been letting you help because you seemed so eager to contribute. It made you feel important." The casual cruelty of her words left me speechless. As I struggled to respond, I noticed something that made my blood run cold: a shopping bag from an expensive boutique sitting by my mother's chair. The receipt was visible, showing a purchase of over $600 from yesterday. "Is that a new designer purse?" I asked quietly, pointing to the bag. My mother glanced at it and then back at me, a flicker of guilt crossing her face before she composed herself. "I got a little something on sale. It's been ages since I treated myself." "With what money?" I pressed, the pieces falling into place. "The money I send for Dad's medication and the mortgage?" "Now see here," my father began, his face flushing. "What we do with our money is none of your business. We're the parents, you're the child. Your money." I laughed bitterly. "I've been sending you $1,200 every month. Money I could have been saving for my own restaurant. And you're spending it on luxury items while claiming financial hardship." "Don't be so dramatic," my mother snapped. "We've given you everything. We put you through college. We gave you opportunities most people would be grateful for." Grateful. The word stuck in my throat. Should I be grateful that you've hidden my career from your friends for years? Should I be grateful that neither of you has ever once visited me at work to see what I actually do? Should I be grateful that you're taking my hard-earned money and spending it on designer bags while my own brother excludes me from his wedding because my job embarrasses him? My parents exchanged another look, not of shame or regret, but of annoyance, as if I were a child throwing a tantrum. "You should be grateful for our honesty," my father said coldly. "We've indulged this waitress phase of yours long enough. It's time you grew up and got a real job, like your brother." In that moment, something broke inside me, and something else, something stronger, took its place. I saw my parents, clearly perhaps for the first time. They had never respected my choices or valued me for who I was. The support I thought was my familial duty had been treated as an entitlement, squandered on maintaining appearances while they continued to belittle my work and my dreams. I stood up, suddenly calm in the eye of an emotional hurricane. "I understand now," I said quietly. "I've never been good enough for this family, not because I failed, but because you measure success by status, not character or happiness." "Don't be silly," my mother began, but I cut her off. "Fine. I'll never have anything to do with you again," I said, my voice steady despite the trembling in my hands. "And I'm stopping all financial support immediately. No more mortgage payments, no more medical bills. You can ask your precious Matthew for help or sell another designer purse." My parents' expressions shifted from dismissive to shocked in an instant. "Now wait just a minute," my father spluttered. "You can't just—" "That's our line," my mother interrupted, her face hardening as she stood to face me. "We're cutting you off, Amber. If you can't respect this family's standards, then you're no longer welcome in it." I couldn't help but laugh, a bitter, broken sound. "Cut me off from what exactly?" "I've been supporting myself since culinary school. I've been supporting you for the past 3 years. I'm not losing anything I need by walking away." The realization dawned on their faces slowly. They had no power over me anymore. No emotional leverage. No financial control. Get out, my father said, his voice trembling with rage. And don't come back until you're ready to apologize and change your ways. I walked out without another word, my heart simultaneously breaking and hardening with each step. The drive home from my parents' house was a blur. Streetlights streaked past like shooting stars as I gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. My mind replayed the confrontation on an endless loop, the cold laughter, the casual dismissal of my career, the stunning revelation that they'd been spending my support money on luxury items while continuing to ask for more. By the time I reached my apartment, a strange calm had settled over me. The kind of clarity that only comes after a storm has passed, leaving destruction, but also a clean slate in its wake. I sat in my parked car for several minutes, breathing deeply, then went inside and did something I should have done years ago. I canceled the automatic transfers to my parents' account. The sense of liberation was immediate and overwhelming. Fine. I'll never have anything to do with you again, I had told them. The words had flowed from a place of pain, but now I recognized them as the beginning of my freedom. My apartment felt different somehow, emptier yet lighter. I moved through the small space like a ghost, touching furniture and photographs as if seeing them for the first time. A framed picture of Matthew and me from his college graduation caught my eye. We were smiling, his arm around my shoulders, both of us looking toward a future we thought we'd share in some way. With deliberate care, I removed the photo from the wall and placed it face down in a drawer. Then I did the same with every family picture in the apartment, methodically removing all visual reminders of the people who couldn't see my worth. The tears came suddenly and violently, great, heaving sobs that bent me double and left me gasping for air. I cried for the brother I'd lost to status and pretension. I cried for the parents who valued appearances over authenticity. Mostly, I cried for the years I'd spent seeking approval from people incapable of giving it. When the crying jag finally subsided, I felt hollow but cleansed. I stood up, washed my face, and began to clean my apartment with a ferocity that bordered on mania. Scrubbing, dusting, organizing, physical labor to match the emotional purge I'd just experienced. Around midnight, my phone buzzed with a text from Jasmine, "Just checking on you. Haven't heard from you since you went to your parents. Everything okay?" I called her immediately, and to her credit, she answered despite the late hour. When I told her everything that had happened, she didn't offer platitudes or empty reassurances. Instead, she said, "I'm coming over," and hung up. 20 minutes later, we sat on my freshly vacuumed carpet, sharing a pint of ice cream as I recounted every painful detail of the confrontation. "I'm proud of you," Jasmine said when I finished. "Do you know how much courage it takes to stand up to family like that? To choose your own worth when they refuse to see it?" "It doesn't feel like courage," I admitted. "It feels like failure. Like I couldn't make them love me enough." "That's not on you, Amber. You can't make people value what they're determined to dismiss. Your family's inability to appreciate you isn't a reflection of your worth. It's a reflection of their limitations." We talked until dawn, Jasmine's friendship a lifeline in the darkness of family rejection. She helped me see that cutting ties wasn't an act of spite but of self-preservation, a necessary step toward building a life defined by my own values rather than my family's expectations. The next morning, I dragged myself to work despite less than 2 hours of sleep. Frank took one look at my face and pulled me aside. "What happened to you?" he asked, his gruff voice softened with concern. I gave him the condensed version, expecting sympathy or perhaps awkward discomfort. Instead, he nodded thoughtfully and said, "My father didn't speak to me for 15 years after I opened this place. He wanted me to take over his accounting firm. Said I was throwing my education away to play restaurant." The echo of my mother's words made me wince. "How did you handle it?" "Poorly at first," Frank admitted. "Drank too much, worked too hard, tried to prove him wrong instead of focusing on what made me happy. Then one day I realized something important. Success is defined by the person living the life, not by the people watching from the sidelines. Did you ever reconcile with your father? I asked. On his deathbed. He finally ate at my restaurant and admitted the clam linguine was not bad. Frank's laugh held decades of complicated emotions. It wasn't the apology I wanted, but it was the one he could give. The point is, I didn't need his approval to build a good life. Neither do you. Frank's wisdom stayed with me as I moved through my shift, serving customers with the same care and attention I always did, despite my personal turmoil. There was dignity in this work, whatever my family thought. There was value in doing something well, even if it wasn't prestigious in their eyes. That evening, I logged into my online banking account and documented every payment I'd made to my parents over the past 3 years. Nearly $45,000 in total, money that could have been saved toward my own restaurant. I organized the records carefully and saved them to a secure folder, not out of any desire for reimbursement, but as a reminder of my own worth and contributions if my resolve ever weakened. My phone buzzed throughout the day with texts and calls from my parents, alternating between guilt trips and angry demands. I didn't respond to any of them. Eventually, they stopped. A week later, an envelope arrived containing an invitation to Matthew's wedding. A handwritten note was attached. Amber, we've decided you can attend as a guest, not in the wedding party. Please wear something appropriate and don't mention your job to any of Brittany's family. Mom. I stood in my kitchen, reading and rereading the note, feeling nothing but a dull ache where sharp pain had once lived. Without hesitation, I marked regretfully declines on the RSVP card, wrote, I deserve better than this across the bottom, and mailed it back the same day. The decision to cut ties completely wasn't made in a moment of anger, but in countless small moments of clarity that followed. It was in the peaceful mornings without anxiety about family judgment. It was in the freedom to pursue my culinary education without apologetic explanations. It was in the gradual recognition that I was more than the role they had assigned me, the disappointing daughter, the embarrassing sister, the financial support system they couldn't acknowledge. I was Amber Sullivan, future restaurant owner, dedicated culinary student, loyal friend, and skilled waitress. And, for the first time in my life, that was more than enough. 6 months passed in a blur of focused intensity. Without the financial drain of supporting my parents, I was able to increase my culinary class load, taking evening courses in business management, food costing, and advanced cooking techniques. My small apartment became a test kitchen, with weekends devoted to developing signature recipes and refining techniques. Frank noticed the change in me immediately, not just my improved skills, but my confidence. The weight of seeking family approval had lifted, allowing me to stand taller, speak more assertively, and take creative risks I would have shied away from before. You're not the same person who walked in here 3 years ago, he commented one evening as we closed the restaurant. This version of you is uncompromising. Is that bad? I asked, pausing while counting the register. Hell no, he laughed. It's exactly what this industry needs. People who know their worth and won't let anyone undervalue them or their work. My estrangement from my family remained complete. No calls, no texts, no visits. The silence was painful at first, then strangely peaceful and finally empowering. I was building a life on my own terms, undiluted by their judgment or expectations. In August, an opportunity arose that would change everything. Sophia Martinez, a renowned chef who had recently moved to our city to open a new restaurant, came to dine at Frank's. I was assigned to her table, unaware of her identity until Frank frantically whispered it to me as I approached with water glasses. I treated her like any other guest, attentively but not obsequiously, offering genuine recommendations when asked and ensuring her dining experience was seamless. When she requested to speak to the chef about a particular dish, I brought Frank out from the kitchen. This young woman, Sophia said, gesturing to me, gave me the most articulate description of your braised short rib I've ever heard from a server. She clearly understands food on a technical level. Frank beamed. Amber's not just a server. She's a culinary student and one of the most talented food people I've ever worked with. To my astonishment, Sophia turned to me and said, "There's a regional cooking competition next month. Emerging chefs showcase original dishes judged by established restaurateurs. You should enter." "I'm not a chef," I protested. "I haven't even completed my culinary program. Titles don't make chefs," Sophia replied. "Understanding food does." "The application deadline is next week. Think about it." After she left, Frank practically pushed me into the office to fill out the application immediately. "This is your chance, Amber." Sophia Martinez doesn't give compliments lightly. The following weeks were a grueling balance of work, study, and competition preparation. I developed and refined a signature dish, a modern take on comfort food that showcased both technical skill and emotional connection to cooking. I practiced it dozens of times, adjusting seasoning, presentation, and technique until each element was perfect. Jasmine became my unofficial taster and cheerleader, sampling every iteration and offering honest feedback. "This is it," she declared after trying the final version. "This dish tells your story." One evening, scrolling through social media during a rare break, I stumbled across Matthew's wedding photos. There they were, my brother and Brittany, my parents, extended family, and friends, all smiling in formal attire against the backdrop of the Lakeside Country Club. The pain I expected to feel was there, but duller, more distant. Like looking at a memory that belonged to someone else. What struck me most was how artificial it all looked. The forced smiles, the perfectly arranged poses, the obvious concern with appearing a certain way. I wondered if anyone there was truly present, truly celebrating love rather than status. I hoped Matthew was happy, even as I acknowledged that his version of happiness was no longer compatible with my presence in his life. I closed the app without commenting or reacting to the photos. My focus needed to be on my future, not their carefully curated present. The day of the competition arrived with perfect September weather, crisp and clear, full of possibility. Jasmine helped me transport my ingredients and equipment to the downtown event center where 20 emerging chefs would compete for recognition and prizes. Frank arrived shortly before my scheduled cooking time, wearing a clean chef's coat instead of his usual stained apron. "I wouldn't miss this," he said, giving my shoulder a supportive squeeze. The competition kitchen was intimidating, all stainless steel and bright lights, with judges and spectators watching every move. As I took my station, I felt a momentary wave of panic. What was I doing here among trained chefs? What if my family was right about my restaurant fantasy being unrealistic? Then I looked up and saw Jasmine and Frank in the audience, their faces full of genuine pride and support. These people, my chosen family, believed in me not despite my career choice, but because of it. They had seen my dedication, my growth, my passion. Their faith in me wasn't conditional on status or appearances. I took a deep breath and began to cook. 2 hours later, I stood before the judges, presenting my dish, a deconstructed shepherd's pie with sous vide lamb, truffled potato puree, and caramelized vegetable juice. As I described each component and my inspiration, I felt a confidence I'd never experienced before. This was me, my vision, my skill, my voice. When the results were announced, I had won second place out of 20 competitors. The judges praised my technical execution and emotional connection to the dish. More importantly, several restaurant investors approached me afterward, expressing interest in my unique culinary perspective and asking about my future plans. As I was packing up my equipment, still dazed from the attention, Sophia Martinez stopped by my station. "Congratulations," she said. "Second place in this competition is no small achievement. What's next for you?" "I'm saving to open my own small café," I replied. "Something intimate where I can showcase comfort food with modern techniques." She handed me her business card. "Call me when you're ready." I know some people who might be interested in investing in that concept, especially with the talent you've demonstrated today. That night, Jasmine, Frank, and I celebrated at a dive bar near my apartment, laughing and talking until closing time. As we walked home under starlit skies, I realized something profound. I had built a life filled with people who valued me for exactly who I was. No pretense, no conditions, no pressure to be someone else. For the first time since the wedding exclusion, I felt genuinely grateful for my brother's rejection. It had been the catalyst for this transformation, this growth into someone stronger and more authentic than I could have become while seeking approval from people determined to withhold it. To rejection, I said, raising an imaginary glass to the night sky. Sometimes it's just redirection in disguise. 1 year later, I stood in the freshly painted interior of Amber's, my small but already popular café in the Arts District. The morning sun streamed through large windows, illuminating the rustic tables and open kitchen where customers could watch their food being prepared. The air smelled of freshly baked bread and brewing coffee, the scent of a dream realized. With Sophia's connections and Frank's mentorship, I had secured modest investor funding, enough to lease and renovate the space. Jasmine had left her waitressing job to become my front-of-house manager, bringing her warm personality and impeccable service standards to my fledgling business. We had been open for just 3 months, but word was spreading. Local food bloggers praised our innovative take on comfort classics. Regular customers had already established their favorite tables and dishes. Most gratifying were the culinary students who came to watch and learn, seeing in me the possibility of forging their own path. That Tuesday morning, a reporter from the city newspaper arrived to interview me for their local business spotlight section. She took photos of the space, sampled several dishes, and asked thoughtful questions about my culinary philosophy and business approach. "What inspired you to open Amber's?" she asked toward the end of our conversation. I considered giving the sanitized version: culinary school, mentorship, love of food. Instead, I offered the truth. Rejection, actually. My family couldn't see value in my work as a waitress or my dream of opening a restaurant. Being excluded from my brother's wedding because of my career choice forced me to decide what I truly valued and who I wanted to be. This cafe is the result of choosing myself and my passion over others' expectations. The reporter seemed surprised by my candor but appreciative. "That's a powerful story of resilience," she said, making additional notes. "Do you have any relationship with your family now?" "No," I replied simply. "But I've built a chosen family of friends and mentors who support my goals and respect my work." Sometimes the family you create is more nurturing than the one you're born into. The article was published the following Sunday, featuring a full-page spread with photos of the cafe and me in my chef's coat. The headline read, "From Rejection to Restaurateur: How Amber Sullivan Turned Family Disappointment into Culinary Success." I hadn't expected such prominent placement or the personal angle the story took. While I was grateful for the exposure for the cafe, I felt a twinge of discomfort at having my family estrangement so publicly documented. I hadn't named names or shared specific details, but anyone who knew the Sullivan family would recognize the situation. 3 days after the article appeared, my phone rang with a number I hadn't seen in 18 months, my parents' landline. I let it go to voicemail, my heart racing despite my best efforts to remain calm. The message was from my mother, her voice artificially bright. "Amber, darling, we saw the lovely article about your cafe. Dad and I are so proud of what you've accomplished. We'd love to come by and see the place sometime. Call us back when you can, sweetheart." No acknowledgement of our estrangement. No apology for their hurtful words or actions. Just a breezy message that suggested our relationship was perfectly intact now that my career had gained some public recognition. Later that same day, an email arrived from Matthew, the first contact since I'd declined his wedding invitation. "Impressive article. Brittany and I have been having some difficulties lately. Would be good to reconnect. Maybe we could meet for coffee." Again, No acknowledgement of the pain he'd caused, no ownership of his role in our estrangement. Just a casual suggestion of reconnection now that his own life was facing challenges. I showed both messages to Jasmine during our afternoon break. Unbelievable, she muttered, handing my phone back. They're only reaching out because you're successful now. It's not about reconciliation, it's about saving face. Maybe, I said, wanting to be fair despite the skepticism in my gut. Or maybe seeing the article made them realize what they lost. What are you going to do? Jasmine asked. I don't know, I admitted. Part of me wants to ignore them completely. Another part thinks this might be a chance to establish new boundaries, on my terms this time. After much deliberation, I decided to respond to my parents first. I called when I knew they'd both be home. Amber, how wonderful to hear from you, my mother gushed when she answered. We've been telling everyone about your café. Mrs. Bennington from the garden club went there for brunch and said it was just charming. Thank you for reaching out, I said, keeping my voice neutral. I appreciate the congratulations. We'd love to come by for dinner soon, my father chimed in, apparently on speakerphone. Maybe this weekend? We could bring the Hendersons. You remember Tom Henderson, my golf partner? His son just got back from culinary school in France. Very talented young man, and single too. The implication was clear. Now that my business had some legitimacy, they were eager to reclaim me as their daughter, even set me up with someone they deemed appropriate. Nothing had changed. Before we discuss visits or dinners, I said carefully, I think we need to address what happened between us. The things that were said. The way I was treated when Matthew excluded me from his wedding. An uncomfortable silence followed. Oh, Amber, my mother finally sighed. That was ages ago. Families have disagreements all the time. There's no need to dwell on unpleasantness. It wasn't a disagreement, Mom. You and Dad told me my career was embarrassing and not worthy of respect. You laughed when I told you how hurt I was by Matthew's exclusion. And you spent the money I sent for your mortgage and Dad's medication on luxury items while continuing to ask for more. Now see here, my father interrupted, his voice hardening. If you're just going to dredge up ancient history and make accusations, perhaps this call was premature. It's not ancient history to me, I replied, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. It's a wound that hasn't healed because it's never been acknowledged. I can't just pretend it didn't happen because my career has gained some public recognition. What exactly do you want from us, Amber? My mother asked, exasperation evident in her tone. Acknowledgement. An apology. Some indication that you understand how deeply your words and actions hurt me. Another silence, then my father cleared his throat. Well, if that's how you're going to be, I suppose there's nothing more to discuss. When you're ready to move forward without all these demands, you know where to find us. The call ended shortly after with nothing resolved. I felt a familiar ache, but also a strange sense of validation. I had stood my ground, articulated my needs, and refused to accept conditional love disguised as reconciliation. 2 days later, I agreed to meet Matthew for coffee at a neutral location, a small shop halfway between his office and my café. I arrived early, choosing a table in the corner where we could talk privately. He looked different than I remembered, thinner, with dark circles under his eyes and a perpetual furrow between his brows. His designer suit hung slightly loose on his frame. Thanks for meeting me, he said, sliding into the seat across from me. You look good. Success suits you. Thank you, I replied simply. How are you, Matthew? He sighed, running a hand through his hair. Honestly, not great. Brittany and I separated 3 months ago. She's filing for divorce. I'm sorry to hear that, I said and meant it. Whatever our differences, I didn't wish him unhappiness. The funny thing is, he continued, staring into his coffee, when things started falling apart, I realized I had no one to talk to. No real friends, just business associates and Brittany's social circle. And my sister, who I'd pushed away because she was just a waitress. He looked up, meeting my eyes. I was an ass, Amber. A status-obsessed, shallow ass. His candor surprised me. Yes, you were, I agreed, not unkindly. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. Direct as ever. I've missed that. Nobody tells me the truth anymore. What happened with Brittany? I asked. The usual. Grew apart, different priorities. But mostly, I think she realized I wasn't the person she thought she was marrying. I spent so much time becoming what I thought others wanted that I lost myself somewhere along the way. We talked for nearly 2 hours, the conversation gradually shifting from awkward to genuine. Matthew asked thoughtful questions about my café, my culinary approach, my goals for the future. For the first time in years, he seemed to be seeing me, not the sister who embarrassed him, but the woman who had built something meaningful through hard work and vision. Mom and Dad reached out after that newspaper article, I told him eventually. They wanted to visit the café, bring their friends, act as if nothing had happened. When I asked for an acknowledgement of how they'd treated me, they shut down. Matthew nodded, unsurprised. They did the same when I told them about the separation. Asked what people would think, whether I'd considered how it would affect Dad's standing at the club. Not once did they ask how I was feeling. Are you staying in touch with them? I asked. Minimally. I'm trying to figure out who I am when I'm not performing for their approval. It's harder than I expected. As we prepared to leave, Matthew hesitated, then asked, "Do you think we could try again?" As siblings, I mean. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'd like the chance to earn back your trust. I considered his request carefully. I'd like that, but things would have to be different. I won't hide who I am or what I do. I won't tolerate disrespect of my career or my choices. And I won't pretend the past didn't happen just to make reconciliation more comfortable. That's fair, he said, nodding. More than fair, considering everything. We parted with a tentative hug and plans to meet again the following month. As I watched him walk away, I felt cautiously hopeful. Not about an immediate restoration of our relationship, but about the possibility of building something new, something based on mutual respect rather than shared DNA alone. The next day, my parents showed up at the cafe unannounced during the lunch rush. They were dressed formally, as if attending a country club function rather than visiting a casual eatery. My mother carried a small gift bag with tissue paper poking out the top. "Surprise," she called as they entered, drawing the attention of several customers. "We thought we'd stop by and see your little place." I was in the middle of expediting orders, my hands full of plates, when Jasmine intercepted them. "Welcome to Amber's," she said professionally. "Do you have a reservation?" "We're Amber's parents," my mother announced, as if this entitled them to special treatment. "We don't need a reservation to visit our daughter's restaurant." Jasmine caught my eye across the counter, raising an eyebrow in silent question. I nodded slightly, indicating I would handle the situation. "Mom, Dad," I said, approaching after delivering the plates. "This is unexpected. We're in the middle of service right now. If you'd like to stay for lunch, Jasmine can seat you, but I won't be able to talk until after the rush." My father looked affronted. "We drove all the way from Lakeview to see you, and that's all you have to say?" "I'm working," I explained simply. "Just like you wouldn't expect to have a personal conversation with your clients during a business meeting, I can't step away from my responsibilities here." "Well, I never," my mother huffed. "We came to support you, Amber. To show an interest in your establishment." The conversation continued in this vein, with my parents growing increasingly frustrated by my refusal to drop everything for their impromptu visit. Eventually, they declined to stay for lunch, leaving the gift bag on the counter with a terse, "Call us when you have time for family." Inside the bag was a generic "congratulations" card signed by both of them and a small ceramic plaque reading, "Bless this kitchen," neither personal nor particularly thoughtful given my well-known secular approach to cooking. That evening, after closing, Jasmine and I shared a bottle of wine at the bar and discussed the day's events. "They still don't get it, do they?" she said, shaking her head. "They see your success as validation of them somehow, not as something you've achieved despite their lack of support. They want to be associated with the successful cafe owner," I agreed, not with the waitress who embarrassed them. It's not about me, it's about how they can use my current status to enhance their own. Are you going to call them? I considered the question carefully. Yes, but not to apologize or smooth things over. I'm going to try one more time to explain what I need from them for a relationship to be possible. The call, when I made it the next day, went much as I expected. My parents were indignant about their treatment at the café, dismissive of my boundaries, and unwilling to acknowledge any wrongdoing on their part. You're holding a grudge, my mother accused. It's not healthy, Amber. Families should forgive each other. Forgiveness requires acknowledgement and change, I countered. You can't expect me to forget years of dismissal and disrespect just because you've decided my career is acceptable now that it has public recognition. I don't know what happened to you, my father said coldly. You used to be such a sweet girl. Now you're so demanding, so uncompromising. I grew up, Dad. I learned to value myself even when you couldn't. And yes, I am uncompromising about being treated with basic respect and dignity. The conversation ended with my mother in tears and my father angrily declaring that I was not being family. I hung up feeling drained but resolute. I had communicated my needs clearly and stood firm in my worth. The ball was in their court now. 6 months later, they had yet to pick it up. Time has a way of clarifying what matters. In the 18 months since that newspaper article put my family estrangement into public view, I've learned that healing doesn't always look like reconciliation. Sometimes it looks like building something new from the ashes of what was lost. Amber's Cafe flourished beyond my most optimistic projections. We expanded into the vacant space next door 6 months ago, doubling our seating capacity and adding a small retail section selling house-made preserves and specialty ingredients. Jasmine now manages a staff of 12, and I've hired 2 assistant chefs to help execute my menu while I focus on creative development and business growth. My most recent triumph came last week when I received a call informing me that Amber's had been selected as a finalist for the Regional Restaurant Association's Best New Establishment Award. The recognition validated not just my culinary skills, but my business acumen, proof that I wasn't just playing restaurant, as my mother had once dismissively claimed. Through it all, my relationship with Matthew has slowly mended. After our coffee shop reunion, we began meeting monthly, then bi-weekly. Our conversations, initially awkward and guarded, gradually became more authentic. He attended the cafe's 1-year anniversary celebration, arriving early to help set up chairs and staying late to wash dishes when one of my staff called in sick. You don't have to do this, I told him as he rolled up the sleeves of his still expensive shirt to plunge his hands into soapy water. I know, he replied simply. I want to. In those 4 words lay the difference between obligation and choice, between the performance of family and its genuine expression. Matthew was choosing to show up, to support, to see me for who I was rather than who he wanted me to be. My parents have been a different story. After our last difficult phone call, they maintained their position that I was being unreasonable in expecting an apology or acknowledgement. Occasional text messages arrive on holidays or after Amber's is mentioned in local media, always acting as if our relationship is normal and intact. I respond politely but briefly, maintaining the boundary I've established. The award nomination brought this dynamic to a head when my parents called, excited about attending the gala ceremony. We're so proud, my mother gushed. We've already told everyone at the club. I've ordered a new dress, and your father's having his tuxedo altered. I appreciate your enthusiasm, I said carefully, but I haven't extended an invitation. Silence. Then my father's voice, tight with indignation. We're your parents, Amber. We don't need an invitation to celebrate our daughter's success. Actually, you do, I replied, surprised by my own calmness. The relationship we currently have doesn't include attending important events together. We've never resolved the issues between us. Are you still holding on to that? My mother interjected. It's been 2 years, Amber. Matthew has moved past it. Why can't you? Matthew and I have worked to build a new relationship based on mutual respect. You and I haven't done that work. You've never acknowledged how your words and actions hurt me. You've never recognized the validity of my career choice or life path. You've simply decided that my success makes me acceptable again. This is ridiculous, my father declared. We're your parents. We've loved and supported you your entire life. Love isn't dismissing someone's dreams as fantasies. Support isn't laughing when they share their pain. Family isn't conditional on status or appearances. I took a deep breath. I would actually like you to be part of my life, but not under the pretense that everything is fine when it isn't. The conversation continued in circles for several more minutes before ending with my mother in tears and my father angrily hanging up. I sat in my office afterward, not feeling the satisfaction I'd expected from standing my ground, but a quiet confidence that I had honored my own worth. The morning of the awards ceremony, I arrived at the café early to finalize details before closing for the day. To my surprise, Matthew was waiting outside, a small envelope in his hand. Shouldn't you be at work? I asked, unlocking the door. Took the day off to help my sister prepare for her big night, he replied with a smile. Also, I have something for you. Inside the envelope was a card. Not a generic congratulations card like my parents had given, but a handmade one featuring a watercolor painting of Amber's storefront, clearly done by Matthew himself. I didn't know you painted, I said, genuinely surprised. I didn't either until recently. Part of finding myself again after the divorce. He shrugged self-consciously. I'm not very good yet, but I wanted to make something personal for you. Inside, he had written, Amber, I'm so proud of the woman you've become, not despite standing up to our family, but because of it. Your courage showed me a different way to live. Thank you for giving me a second chance to be your brother. Love, Matthew. I hugged him tightly, tears threatening to spill. This means more than any award could. We spent the day together, Matthew pitching in wherever needed, helping me organize my speech notes, running last-minute errands, even picking up my dress from the tailor. It felt like recovering a piece of myself I'd thought was lost forever, the connection to someone who shared my history but now also shared my present. The ceremony that evening was a glittering affair at the downtown Marriott, with chefs and restaurateurs from across the region gathering to celebrate excellence in the industry. Jasmine and Frank accompanied me, along with Matthew and Sophia, who had become both mentor and friend. When the announcement came that Amber's had won, the roar of applause from my chosen family nearly drowned out the rest of the room. As I made my way to the stage, I caught sight of two figures slipping into seats at the back, my parents, dressed formally and looking uncomfortable but present. I hadn't invited them. They had likely purchased tickets independently after our conversation. For a moment, I felt a flicker of the old anxiety, the fear of disappointment, the weight of expectation. Then I looked at the front row, where Matthew, Jasmine, Frank, and Sophia were on their feet, applauding with genuine pride and affection. These were the people who had seen my worth when I couldn't see it myself, who had supported my dreams without conditions or judgment. My acceptance speech was brief but heartfelt, thanking those who had believed in me and acknowledging the journey that had brought me to this moment. I didn't mention my parents directly, but I did include a line about learning that sometimes the people who challenge us most ultimately give us the gift of discovering our own strength. After the ceremony, I was surrounded by well-wishers and industry colleagues. When the crowd thinned, I found my parents waiting awkwardly at the edge of the room. My mother clutched her purse tightly. My father stood with uncharacteristic hesitation. Congratulations, my mother said, her voice small. Your restaurant deserved to win. It's really wonderful, what you've created. Thank you, I replied, genuinely touched by what seemed like a sincere compliment rather than an attempt to share in my success. We were wrong, my father said suddenly, the words clearly difficult for him. Not about everything, but about important things. About your career choice. About how we treated you. It wasn't a full apology or acknowledgement, but it was more than I had ever expected from him. A small crack in the facade of perfectionism and status that had defined our family for so long. That means a lot to hear, I said carefully. We'd like to try again, my mother added. If you're willing. Not pretending nothing happened, but moving forward somehow. I didn't commit to anything specific that night. The wounds were too deep, the trust too broken for easy reconciliation. But I did agree to a lunch the following month, a first step toward exploring whether a new kind of relationship might be possible. As they left, Matthew approached, placing a supportive hand on my shoulder. You okay? I think so, I said, watching our parents' retreating figures. It's a start, maybe. You don't owe them forgiveness, he reminded me gently. I know, but I might owe it to myself to see if there's something worth salvaging. The food festival 6 months later marked another milestone in my career, an invitation to showcase Amber's signature dishes alongside the city's most celebrated chefs. As I prepared my station that bright spring morning, I looked out at the crowd beginning to gather and felt a profound sense of gratitude. My journey from excluded sister to award-winning restaurateur hadn't been linear or easy. The pain of family rejection had nearly broken me, but in rebuilding myself, I had discovered strengths I never knew I possessed. I had learned to define success on my own terms, to recognize true support, and to value connection over status. Most importantly, I had learned that family, real family, isn't about shared DNA or social expectations. It's about who shows up, who sees you clearly, who celebrates your authentic self rather than demanding a performance. As the festival buzzer sounded and visitors began approaching my booth, I caught sight of familiar faces in the crowd, Jasmine and Frank near the front, Matthew with his new girlfriend, and, surprisingly, my parents, tentatively approaching from the side. Our monthly lunches had been awkward, but increasingly honest, laying the groundwork for a relationship based on who we actually were rather than who we pretended to be. I served them all the same dish, my award-winning comfort food with a modern twist, and watched as they experienced, each in their own way, what I had been trying to share all along, the joy of creating something authentic, the satisfaction of honoring one's true path, the nourishment that comes from genuine connection. Was it worth it? A young culinary student asked me later that day. Standing up to your family, risking everything for your dream? I thought about the question carefully before answering. The hardest part wasn't standing up to them, I finally said. It was standing up for myself even when no one else would. Once I learned to do that, everything else became possible. As the festival wound down and I collected my top honors ribbon, I realized that the true prize wasn't the recognition or even the successful business. It was the peace that comes from living in alignment with one's values, from creating boundaries that protect your worth, from building a life that doesn't require apology or justification. Sometimes the family we're born into can't give us what we need. Sometimes the path to healing leads away from reconciliation and toward creating something new entirely. And sometimes, when we're brave enough to stand firm in our worth, we open the door for authentic connections that nurture rather than diminish. This is what I've learned, and what I hope resonates with you. Have you ever had to stand up for yourself against family expectations? Did it lead to growth, reconciliation, or both? Share your stories in the comments below. I read everyone. And if this story touched you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that their worth isn't determined by family approval. Thank you for being part of this journey with me. Remember, the family you choose, including yourself, can bring more healing than the family you're born into.